When you think of a glamorous Hollywood starlet with undeniable allure, Marilyn might be the first to come to mind. However, long before Norma Jean Baker became the 1950s icon known for her sultry charm and tender vulnerability, a different woman set the standard for the platinum blonde archetype in Hollywood. That woman was Jean Harlow. Born in 1911, Harlow emerged during the 1930s as a dazzling screen presence, captivating audiences with her seductive beauty and unique persona. Her influence on the silver screen was profound, with even Marilyn Monroe admiring and emulating her every gesture, appearance, and charm, ultimately crafting her own identity as a tribute to Harlow's legacy. The two actresses shared not only immense fame but also tragic, untimely deaths, forever intertwining their legacies. Now, 84 years after Harlow's passing, we delve into her remarkable journey, one defined by early success, personal turmoil, and lasting cultural impact. Stay with us until the end to uncover the full story, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified of our next deep dive into Hollywood's golden age. Jean Harlow, born Harleen Harlow Carpenter in 1911 in Kansas City, Missouri, was thrust into a world already shaped by the aspirations of her mother, Jean Poe Carpenter. Jean Poe had always dreamed of becoming an actress, but by the time she reached 34, her chances of breaking into show business were slim. Her dream unfulfilled, Jean Poe turned her focus entirely on her daughter, hoping to live out her own ambitions through Harleen. This intense drive for success created a deep, and sometimes suffocating bond between the two, with Jean Poe not only acting as a mother, but also as a manager, pushing Harleen into the limelight. The mother-daughter relationship was far from typical. It was one of constant emotional dependency, with Jean Poe guiding nearly every decision of Harleen's life. They moved to Hollywood when Harleen was still a child, with Jean Poe determined to have her daughter achieve the fame she never could. The pressures of this relationship began to take their toll early in Harleen's life, influencing her choices and shaping the person she would become. Even as she began her rise to fame, the emotional weight of her mother's dreams hung over her, affecting her personal life and sense of identity. This bond, which at times bordered on manipulation, would continue to define Jean Harlow's journey, even as she became an international star. The complex relationship between mother and daughter left a lasting impact on Jean Harlow, one that she would never fully escape, despite achieving the fame and success her mother had always dreamed of. Harleen, often called the baby by her mother and close friends, grew up in an environment where she was treated as fragile and precious. This sense of being sheltered would shape much of her early life, giving her a reputation of delicacy that followed her for years. Despite the overprotective atmosphere, Harleen was enrolled in exclusive private schools, where she was taught the social graces necessary for a life in high society. At just 16, she made a bold decision to elope with Charles Chuck McGrew, a young man from a wealthy family who had a significant inheritance. The couple moved to Beverly Hills, where they became part of the glamorous world of upscale living, filled with extravagant parties, heavy drinking, and a lifestyle marked by indulgence. However, beneath the surface of their lavish existence, tensions began to rise. McGrew, feeling uneasy about Harleen's close relationship with her mother, tried to create distance between them. He wanted to establish a more independent life for their marriage, but Harleen's bond with her mother was too strong to sever. The marriage, which had once seemed like a dream, began to unravel under the strain of conflicting loyalties, substance abuse, and their immaturity. Though often overlooked in discussions of her life, this turbulent period had a significant impact on Harleen's future. It not only influenced her personal choices, but also helped set the stage for her eventual transformation into one of Hollywood's most iconic actresses. One day, Jean Harlow's life took a sudden turn when she accompanied a friend to Fox Studios for an audition. Little did she know, this was the start of her path to stardom. At the time, acting wasn't a dream she had been pursuing. However, her stunning looks, paired with her striking platinum blonde hair, caught the attention of several casting agents at the studio. Though she had no real interest in acting, on a whim, she gave the agents her mother's maiden name, Jean Harlow, instead of her real name. Later, encouraged by a dare, she agreed to audition, and to her surprise, she landed small roles in short comedic films. Her first break came when she signed a contract with Harlow Studios, earning a modest $100 a week. During these early roles, she often played the part of a flirtatious or comedic blonde, and she appeared alongside famous comedy duo Laurel and Hardy. These small parts were essential to her growth as an actress, offering her invaluable experience in front of the camera and an introduction to the Hollywood system. What started as a casual, almost accidental foray into the film industry soon turned into a serious and rapidly growing career. Jean Harlow's unexpected entry into Hollywood marked the beginning of her rise from an unknown beauty to one of the most iconic and unforgettable faces of the silver screen. The way fate intervened, allowing her to find success in a field she had never sought out, remains one of the most remarkable stories in the history of cinema. Jean Harlow's major breakthrough came in 1930 with the film Hell's Angels, directed and produced by Howard Hughes, a famously eccentric millionaire. Initially, Hell's Angels was filmed as a silent movie, but the rise of sound in cinema forced Hughes to reshoot much of it. The film's original female lead had difficulty adapting to the new talkie format, leading Hughes to recast the role with Jean Harlow. Her unique voice, glowing presence, and undeniable screen appeal made her an ideal fit for the changing demands of the film industry. Although her performance was initially met with some criticism due to her lack of experience, it was her striking beauty and captivating screen presence that left a lasting impact on audiences. Her role in Hell's Angels not only thrust her into the limelight, but also helped to define the platinum blonde image that would become her iconic trademark. The film's success opened the door to more significant opportunities, cementing her reputation as one of Hollywood's most alluring and visually unforgettable actresses. This marked the moment when Harlow transformed from a relatively unknown newcomer into a true movie star. As Jean Harlow's fame grew, so did her status as Hollywood's ultimate platinum blonde. Initially, she had appeared in several films, but many of her roles were small or uncredited. However, everything changed in 1931 when Columbia Pictures made a bold decision to rename one of her movies Platinum Blonde, directly tying her image to her iconic hair color. This was a brilliant marketing move that transformed her hair into a cultural phenomenon. Her bleached blonde hair quickly became the focus of public obsession. Women across the country tried to replicate the look, though most failed to achieve the same shimmering effect. The process of achieving her platinum blonde hair was grueling, requiring harsh chemicals like ammonia and bleach, as well as soap flakes. This often resulted in severe damage to her hair and scalp, but it did little to deter the public's desire for her iconic look. Over time, Harlow's platinum blonde hair became inseparable from her identity, cementing her place as a true cultural icon. Her image was plastered on countless magazine covers, and she became a symbol of glamour and allure. Harlow's influence extended far beyond the silver screen, shaping fashion and beauty standards of the time. Her iconic look was more than just a trend. It was a cultural statement, one that resonated deeply with audiences, especially during the difficult times of the Great Depression. Her persona offered an escape from the harsh realities of life, providing a sense of fantasy and glamour when many people needed it the most. Even those who had never seen her films could instantly recognize her as the Platinum Blonde, a symbol of rebellion and bold femininity. In this way, Harlow transcended her roles as an actress, becoming a timeless icon whose image continues to inspire fashion and beauty today. Despite early doubts about her acting skills, Jean Harlow quickly became one of Hollywood's most beloved stars. The general public, enchanted by her vibrant energy and alluring presence, gravitated toward her performances, even when critics were more cautious. Her films consistently drew large audiences, and her fan base only grew as people admired her natural charm and glamorous persona. MGM recognized her potential and moved quickly to promote her, launching a nationwide tour to make the most of her rising fame. This tour became a phenomenon, with thousands of fans flocking to see her in person. Harlow's ability to connect with the public during these appearances silenced many of her critics, who had once doubted her acting abilities. The nationwide tour marked a turning point in her career, with the actress now being seen as a box office draw, rather than just another pretty face. Her appearances showed that her charisma extended beyond the screen, and she won over many with her bubbly, down-to-earth personality. As a result, Harlow began to receive more significant roles, showcasing her talents in more complex and substantive films. However, the demands of fame came with a price. Behind the scenes, her personal life became increasingly difficult to manage. The constant scrutiny of her every move, paired with an exhausting work schedule, took a toll on her mental and emotional health. Harlow's dependency on her mother for emotional support only added to the strain, as she struggled to balance the pressures of fame with the difficulties in her personal life. Her private struggles were often magnified by the press, who took great pleasure in exploiting the gap between her glamorous image on screen and the turmoil she faced off-screen. While her professional life continued to flourish, the price of stardom was steep. Despite the emotional challenges she faced, Jean Harlow's career continued to soar, making her one of MGM's biggest stars by the early 1930s. She embodied the modern, carefree woman that audiences admired, even as she quietly fought battles that few knew about. Her rise to fame not only defined her as a symbol of the Hollywood dream, but also highlighted the personal cost of living in the public eye. In 1932, Jean Harlow married Paul Byrne, a successful executive at MGM, who had been instrumental in shaping her career. Their marriage was widely celebrated, with the media painting a picture of a Hollywood fairy tale. Harlow, known for her platinum blonde hair and glamorous persona, seemed to have found stability with Byrne, who was seen as a grounding force in her often chaotic life. However, just 2 months after their wedding, tragedy struck. Paul Byrne was found dead in their home, shot in the head. The authorities quickly declared it a suicide, but the circumstances surrounding his death were shrouded in mystery. A cryptic note was discovered next to Byrne's body, hinting that he had been struggling with feelings of inadequacy. Some believe this was a genuine expression of his emotional turmoil, but others suspected that the note might have been tampered with, perhaps to cover up something more sinister. Rumors circulated that Byrne's death was not as simple as it seemed. Some whispered that a former lover of Byrne's might have been involved in his death, while others speculated that the MGM studio might have orchestrated a cover-up to protect Harlow's reputation. The press, as always in Hollywood, was quick to sensationalize the story, and the media frenzy surrounding Byrne's death became impossible to ignore. Despite the intense public scrutiny, Jean Harlow remained silent about the tragedy. She was reportedly devastated by the loss of her husband, but she chose not to speak publicly about the circumstances of his death. MGM, ever protective of its star, moved swiftly to manage the situation. The studio ensured that Harlow's image remained untarnished, limiting her exposure to any questions or interviews related to the scandal. While the death of Paul Byrne was ruled a suicide, it left a lasting shadow over both Harlow's career and personal life, one that would haunt her for years to come. After Paul Byrne's tragic death, Jean Harlow found herself thrust into the harsh glare of public scrutiny. The press relentlessly focused on her personal life, amplifying every detail and creating a spectacle around her grief. Amidst the media frenzy, Harlow entered into a romantic affair with Max Baer, a famous boxer already married at the time. This relationship only fueled the public's fascination with her, and the scandal surrounding it threatened to ruin her carefully crafted image. MGM, keen to protect its valuable asset, decided to act swiftly. In an effort to quell the growing media storm, the studio arranged a marriage between Harlow and Harold Rawson, a cinematographer who was little known in the public eye. The marriage was a calculated move, designed to offer a narrative of stability and to shift the focus away from Harlow's personal life. This union, however, was not one of love or mutual understanding, but rather a superficial solution to protect Harlow's career. The marriage was a short-lived affair, dissolving within 8 months. As expected, it failed to provide the emotional security Jean sought, and the relationship quietly faded away. Despite her short marriages and relationships, Harlow remained under the watchful eye of both the studio executives and her controlling mother. With her career constantly at risk of being overshadowed by personal scandals, Harlow's personal life remained a battleground for control, with her emotional well-being often overlooked. She was still a star, but her personal struggles continued to simmer beneath the surface, unnoticed by many, even as she endured the pressures of the Hollywood system and the constant demands placed on her. As Jean Harlow's career progressed, her once stunning beauty began to noticeably fade, and this decline was not lost on those around her. Rumors spread throughout Hollywood, suggesting that she was drinking heavily, eating poorly, or gaining weight. However, the reality was much more disturbing. Years of harsh bleaching treatments had severely damaged her trademark platinum blonde hair. It fell out in patches, leaving her with no choice but to wear wigs while filming, a sign of the toll her health was taking. Her skin, which had once been radiant and glowing, became pale and clammy, while she frequently complained of fatigue, bloating, and painful abdominal issues. Despite the visible decline in her appearance and health, many in the industry chose to ignore or dismiss her condition, writing it off as the price of fame or a result of vanity. Her performances, though still powerful and captivating, began to show signs of strain. Behind the scenes, Harlow's suffering was largely overlooked. At the time, medical understanding of internal diseases, such as kidney failure, was limited, and the symptoms she displayed were not properly understood. As she continued to push through the grueling demands of her film schedule, her deteriorating health would soon lead to an inevitable tragedy, one that was far too familiar in an industry more focused on the glamorous image than the well-being of its stars. Suddenly, during the filming of the 1937 romantic comedy Saratoga, Jean Harlow's health began to fail in ways that frightened everyone on set. Each day she appeared more fragile, her face swollen, and her breathing labored. The crew watched as her usual bright energy faded into exhaustion that no amount of rest could ease. At first, her doctors and friends assumed she was fighting a simple illness, perhaps the flu or dehydration from long hours under the studio lights. The diagnosis changed several times, with talk of gallbladder trouble or fatigue from overwork, but no one realized the seriousness of what was happening. As her condition worsened, she struggled to walk across the set, and her co-star Clark Gable grew deeply concerned. Finally, after repeated fainting spells, she was taken to the hospital, where doctors discovered the true cause: uremic poisoning from acute kidney failure. The damage had begun years earlier, likely a lingering effect of scarlet fever she had suffered as a child, and by the time it was recognized, her kidneys could no longer function. In 1937, medical science offered few solutions. Dialysis had not been developed for clinical use, and organ transplants were still a distant dream. The only treatments were rest and prayer, both of which came too late. Production on Saratoga stopped while the studio and her loved ones waited helplessly for news. Within days, Jean Harlow, only 26 years old, slipped away, her passing sending shockwaves through Hollywood. Fans who adored her radiant presence were stunned, having never guessed she was gravely ill. Her final film, completed using stand-ins for unfinished scenes, became a heartbreaking farewell to one of the brightest stars of the 1930s. Jean Harlow's death on June 7, 1937, shocked the world. Only 2 days after receiving her official diagnosis, the 26-year-old actress passed away, leaving behind an unfinished career and a void in Hollywood. Her death was more than just a loss. It was a national tragedy that sent waves of grief across the country. Production on her final film, Saratoga, came to an immediate halt, and the film was later completed using body doubles and long shots to fill in the scenes that Harlow could not finish. The suddenness of her passing left her colleagues and fans stunned, as Harlow had been one of the brightest stars in Hollywood, known for her dazzling beauty, magnetic charm, and lively personality. Her funeral was a grand affair, befitting her status as one of Hollywood's most beloved figures. The ceremony took place at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, where her body was laid to rest in an elegant copper casket. Among those in attendance was Clark Gable, Harlow's frequent co-star and close friend, who was visibly shaken by the loss. Gable, like many others who had worked with Harlow, mourned the passing of a woman whose presence had lit up the silver screen. While the world of cinema mourned the loss of such a vibrant star, a young girl named Norma Jean Baker, later known as Marilyn Monroe, was living in a Los Angeles orphanage. Monroe idolized Harlow from a distance, seeing her as a figure of strength and beauty. Monroe would later admit that Harlow had been her greatest inspiration, a role model she looked up to throughout her life. Monroe even dreamed of portraying Harlow in a biopic, but that project, unfortunately, never came to fruition. Jean Harlow's influence reached beyond her own era. Her legacy continued to shape the stars who followed her, with Monroe herself being a direct reflection of the glamour and allure Harlow had brought to Hollywood. Harlow's name would forever be linked to the golden age of cinema, her legacy enduring in the hearts of those who admired her, and in the way she influenced the next generation of actors and actresses. Jean Harlow's life and career serve as a shining testament to the way talent and beauty can leave an indelible mark on the world. As a woman who rose to fame in the 1930s, she defined what it meant to be a Hollywood bombshell, inspiring generations of actresses to follow in her footsteps. Her natural allure and remarkable presence on screen set the foundation for the iconic roles that would later be claimed by figures like Marilyn Monroe. But beyond her beauty, Harlow's personal story was filled with struggles and heartbreak. Despite the challenges she faced, including her early death at just 26, Harlow's legacy continues to live on. The impact she had on the film industry and popular culture cannot be overstated. She became a symbol not only of glamour, but also of resilience and strength, qualities that continue to resonate with audiences today. Harlow's influence stretches far beyond the films she starred in, shaping the very idea of what it means to be a star in the public eye. As we look back on her life and career, it becomes clear that she was much more than a pretty face. She was an icon whose legacy will never